WHYY News' Civic News Summit. We're excited to have all of you join us for some engaging conversation about how newsrooms can connect to local communities and how local communities can inform the work of newsmaking. And at WHYY, we're so excited to have this next Fireside Chat. I'd first like to introduce to you WHYY's President and CEO, Bill Marrazzo.
Thanks, Sarah. Morning. Morning. This is supposed to be a fireside chat. I'm cold, man. Yeah. Sarah, thank you for including us in today's program. And I guess I want to start, if y'all don't mind, with a further reflection on the richness of the last panel discussion. I don't know that I'm a Luddite, but I am old enough to wish somebody would bring me back my black rotary dial telephone. Because the panel made a great point. For all the richness of communication technology, it can, unless we're careful, separate us rather than bring us back together again. And here at WHYY, one of our strategies is to use the power of mass media, not just to reach a lot of people, but to create value and to create impact by engaging with them off-air and offline because of something they might read or listen to or watch through our traditional broadcast distribution platform. So this discussion, I think, with both Fred and Tony is about the aspiration to bring HYY outside of its traditional media position to try to engage people off-air and offline on a personal basis. Make some sense? Okay. So I'm gonna take the privilege of the chair here to invite you to practice for 1 minute. I don't have books to distribute, Julie, but let me invite you to look behind you, look in front of you, look beside you for somebody who you've not yet met in person, and introduce yourself. Hi, I'm Fred.
It's a pleasure. Always a pleasure to meet you. Namesake. Wonderful idea. Bill does this for our staff meetings. Wonderful idea. That this is now you pass people all day in the hall, but now you have a name and at some level of familiarity. It's great. It's great.
All righty.
Yes, indeed, it's in our meetings also.
All righty. Thank you very much.
It takes over in a life of its own.
Thank you very much. And you know, it's Friday. You know, grab that person, take them out for a beer tonight. You know, all that good stuff. So we're going to attempt to explore the possibility, not just the necessity, but the possibility of imagining how to build skills across a community that represents bringing two or more people together with profoundly different points of view, but in a way that they don't become disagreeable. Make some sense? So is it possible in a world that is so deeply divided, at the moment at least on a partisan basis, or seemingly on a partisan basis, if not on other bases, is it possible to develop some behaviors, some habits, some traditions, some culture inside of society that enables us off-air and offline to do some deep thinking about each other's differing points of view in ways that we can enrich ourselves as citizens of this country. And we have here this morning kind of an interesting representation of the work we're trying to do at HYY in this regard from both a strategic and a tactical standpoint. Fred Sutherland, who, as you may know, is a seasoned senior executive, hailing most recently from the ARAMARK Corporation, has also done an enormous amount of work as a civic and philanthropic leader inside of this community. He gratefully, I can say publicly, chaired WHYY's board for many years, but you've also chaired the board of Episcopal Community Services. I think you also chaired the board of People's Light and Theater Company. I know Barbara, another good friend of WHYY, chaired the board of the Free Library Foundation. So you come from a household that has benefited from the largesse of the corporate sector, but you have seemingly made much of your personal life about contributing to the civic well-being of a community. So let me, Fred, start there and ask you, what is it about your life experiences that has driven you to participate in the support of WHYY's programs around civic dialogue?
Well, thank you, Bill, and it's certainly a pleasure to be here, particularly after I retired, although somewhat before. I just became interested in how government work, how society works, how people relate to each other, how things get done in a productive way, and so we tended to gravitate towards organizations that are making a difference out there in the local community. And another organization that I'm involved in, which you didn't mention, but I'm on the board of trustees, is the National Constitution Center. Julie, nice job this morning. And Vince Stango is here, who's the president and chief operating officer of NCC. Long commute, Vince, right? You didn't get lost. You could hit it with, well, in the old days it would be a 9-iron, and now it's a 3-wood. I think civic dialogue and knowledge, the two are coupled together. And I have a couple of quotes. Where did I put it? Here it is. Yeah. And I'm going to ask you how old you think these quotes are. A popular government without popular information or the means of acquiring it is a prologue to a tragedy. And here's another one. Liberty cannot be preserved without a general knowledge among the people, and the people deserve this knowledge. Those quotes are both 250 years old. One is a quote by James Madison, and the other is a quote by Thomas Jefferson. I think it's anybody who's been through high school and taken civics knows that when the U.S. system of democracy was formed, which, by the way, Winston Churchill said, it's a terrible form of democracy, is a terrible form of governance until you consider all the other forms. He was good with pithy remarks. It was the first time, excluding maybe Athens, Greece, 2,000 years ago, and that was much smaller, where the power was designed to flow up from the bottom, not down from the top. And the people at the top, the natural state of affairs is to take power over time, whether you're conservative or liberal or whatever. So there are many pushes and pulls and pressures to concentrate power at the top. So the framers really concluded that dialogue and understanding and knowledge was amongst the people was a critical ingredient in success, and without it, eventually we would evolve into a form of governance that nobody would particularly like. And so in our own small way, that's the sort of thing that we supported. Here at WHYY, both at the Constitution Center and here at WHYY. You know, here at WHYY, what I think is unique about what you're doing, Bill, is, you know, I think it's easy particularly in the days of electronic media, to sort of sit back in the four walls of your building, right? And what did they say in the old Superman runs? You know, high atop, the Metropolitan newspaper, high atop, you know, beaming out to the public. But you don't want to talk to anybody. You just basically communicate electronically. And what's nice about what WHYY is doing is it's a combination of sort of hot medium and cold medium. So the traditional blogs, posts, internet, websites, along with getting out in the community, convening small groups. And Tony will talk about bridging blocks, but it's a perfect representation of how you're just not going to be able to hold the whole system together, and it's going to deteriorate into something else unless you encourage widespread participation in both education about what the issues are, and then the ability to have productive civil dialogue.
Very, very well said. And we will engage Tony to try to explore what the tactical challenges of doing all of that effectively may or may not be. But let me pick up, Fred, on your aspiration. I mean, let's assume for a moment, at least it's my point of view, that you've got to keep trying to find a more and more productive pathway through systems of democracy to achieve our individual rights and achieve our individual goals. But in a world that at the moment can feel quite hopeless to people, do you feel like these efforts are Pollyanna? Do you feel like it's naive? How do you think about whether they will ever be impactful enough?
Yeah, I wish you hadn't asked me that question. And I try not to think too much about it. You know, the way I think about it, you do what you need, you do what you think is right and what you need to do to make a difference. And you try to work it out in a way that you can make that difference. And it's like, you know, I was in business my entire career. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. And so, you know, I do think that there's a real possibility to make a difference. And but at the end of the day, it comes down, and you and I have talked about this in the context of WHYY strategy back when I was, you know, board chair.
Well, we've been talking about it for about 25 years.
Yeah,
now.
I mean, one word to me is if there's a word that's the operative word here, it's one word, it's impact, right? And we've had these discussions. PBS may be the most trusted brand in the world, right? But if it's number 13 or number 14 in the Philadelphia market, then it's not, which it's not anymore, right? Top 5, then it's not having an impact. So I think there's a lot of people, I think, believe in this, and there's a lot of things that can be done, but a lot of it is, in the old parlance, football parlance, 3 yards in a cloud of dust, right? Tony will talk about bridging blocks. That is really out, that's cool. I mean, it's really out in the community at individual libraries around Philadelphia. But one event, 40 people, that's a success. And then another 30 or another 40. But you got to start somewhere. And then layering this on top is, that's the library, bridging blocks in the libraries is the hyper-local, right? And this is the next level up, and then there's the next level up and the next level up. What the National Constitution Center is doing, which Julie spoke so eloquently about, with the teaching program, I think, Julie or Vince, you're now reaching 70,000 teachers. 75. Well, I'm a little behind. Right. Well, I'll hear that next month, I guess. And 4 million students through those 70,000 with the online content and the curricula. So you're getting into some pretty, and goals to almost double that, right, in the next let's say 5 years. Then you're getting into some real, really the meat of the issue. So I think you can harness skills of organizations like NCC, WHYY, and others, and communications to your advantage to pursue this particular goal.
It's interesting. As I'm listening to you, and you're so much more than a philanthropist, but if I ask you a question about your philanthropic decision-making, a restatement of what you just said is you're interested in marrying mission with impact.
Yeah. We're not into buildings, sorry.
Yeah.
So I don't think you'll see our name on a building.
Right. Well,
probably too expensive anyway.
Right. Those two things, I think for many people, don't reconcile. For a lot of people in any community, I think the richness of particularly a not-for-profit's mission does not always reconcile with impact in the way in which we think about impact as a business matter. You and I have talked about this enough that I think I can say we agree that being a not-for-profit is a tax status. It's not an excuse for mediocrity. So impact matters, right? Can we turn to Tony for a little bit? Tony is our senior manager that oversees WHYY's news service around civic engagement. And Fred just, Tony, described sort of the way most of us think in business, that sort of the hockey stick ultimate success of a long game. How difficult, Tony, has it been to engage people off air and offline in ways that they're learning from each other?
And also give the audience a little bit of perspective on bridging blocks, what it is, what actually happens at an individual session on the ground.
Absolutely. So with bridging blocks, and just to summarize it, the effort is bringing people together on a hot button issue and helping them speak to each other in a civilized manner, which you would think would be a simplistic thing, but when you consider the divides that have occurred as a result of the pandemic, social media, the politics of the world. And so what we do is we'll congregate folks. Every month we gather at 1901 Parkway Central, which is the main library, which actually brings up folks from all over the city. But in addition to that, we go to the branches all around the city. And of course, invariably, we'll always have a different audience. But there's two other elements I'd like to mention here. We've expanded the effort to include senior activity centers and schools, and it's just been an amazing ride. And in terms of the challenge, and I definitely want to come back, particularly on the school side, but the challenge has been, and it seems to be a challenge anytime you do free events, like folks will commit, and if you get half, great. But we take, my team and I have a fantastic team. I sort of tease them because if I add their ages up together, they're both younger than me. I mean, it's right, but but they look at the world a little differently than I do. I worked in sales for 40 years, and my wife makes it. She says, so you're always involved in people's stuff, and that's kind of who I am. I mean, literally on my LinkedIn it says "Lover for People," and I mean it. I coached baseball for 20 years, taught martial arts for over 20 years. So like everything is, I'm always plugged in. So this is for me, it's a perfect, at this stage of my life, I think it's a perfect role for me. But anyway, so what we are discovering with the library events specifically, and I want to speak about those individually if I may have the opportunity. The library is essentially open to the public. So pretty much anybody can show up, they register or not register. And one of the things we changed was registering people at the door. And it's typically an issue. So for example, we've talked about actually this month we're talking about immigration. We've talked about gentrification, homelessness, and everyone has a perspective, right? the thing that I find very compelling is that you'll have people who will come in with greatly differing opinions. And when they humanize each other by interacting in conversation, often they discover that their similarities are more prevalent than their differences. And that's powerful. And I'm sorry, it's not going to work. I mean, electronic media matters, and people communicate the way they communicate, and they take information in the way they do, which is going to be most convenient to their lives. What blows me away is you have the world's knowledge in your pocket, right? You have drive-through pharmacies, you have movies online that you can look at instantaneously, and nobody has time to do anything. That's like madness to me. But so anyway, we've had a number of events, and it seems the sweet spot is 20 to 35 people. Seems to be pretty much a sweet spot for us. And again, you'll have some people who will come in and they'll just want to understand the subject better. Others that have a hard opinion. And but by the end of the night, I think the best endorsement of it is typically at the library we get thrown out. I mean, security's looking at us like, "Yo, this thing's over. What you guys?" But the folks are still engaging with each other, which is phenomenal. And one of the things that I just finished a report for January, February, and March. One of the things that we track is how people become aware of bridging blocks. And for the first time, word of mouth beat out social media. Amazing, right? And I think that speaks to the credibility of the program. One more thing I'll say. I'm sorry, I'm being a little long-winded here, but I'm sitting up here with giants, so I want to get my piece in, right? I think it speaks volumes of the importance in which WHY considers community engagement. And of course, the generous support by the Sutherland family. The fact that I'm up here says it all. I mean, it just speaks volumes. So,
before you jump in, Bill, just a quick piece of color on my wife and I have been to several of the sessions, and the one that stuck in my mind was on gun rights. And I thought, oh man, check your firearm at the door. The bullets are definitely going to be flying here, so just don't catch one from an unexpected direction. And in this case, many of the people were personally affected by gun. They either knew someone had been shot or killed or a relative. And you had people here who were pretty big on the Second Amendment. But what amazed me, and this gets to your point, is when they got in the room and started talking, pretty much everybody in the room recognized that if you had a particularly strong point of view, that probably wasn't going to work. I mean, at the end, crafting something that actually got done wasn't going to work. And so instead of everybody running to the corners of the ring and then running and duking it out, there was this, okay, I'm really anti-gun, but I recognize it's just not practical that we would ban all firearms in the country and just there wouldn't be any. So let's talk about something that actually works, that would provide more control and more safety of guns. But would be in the way of a compromise or something a little more down the middle of the road would be a lot better than what we have, right? And people on both sides, I thought, wow, this is actually, maybe it's the way it's supposed to be, right? And as you say, the headwinds in electronic communications and media and mass communications are strong.
And if I may add to that. Often, so particularly with the library events, you'll have folks in the room who, although they have a strong opinion on a given subject, they come in hoping that someone maybe can perhaps broaden their horizon, if not change their opinion. They're there to challenge their own beliefs. And that's what you'll get when folks are willing to meet one-on-one. They're not coming just to stand and die on a hill. Maybe not the best choice of terms, but you get what I'm saying there. They're there they want their horizons expanded. They want their beliefs challenged. That way they can leave a smarter person and a better informed person.
Do either of you then think that in its initial stage, this kind of experience can create new behaviors, that create new traditions, that create new cultures, in a community. I'm going back to whether or not this is a appropriately intentioned program, but to reach this 6.5 million people a week that WHYY reaches, how do we go from 20 to 30 people in each event to 6 million people striving to understand the differences amongst them?
Let me take that on.
So that's it's a huge question, and I wish that there were, there's frankly no way, if we're really completely honest, I'll be completely honest about it. There's really no. I'm not gonna say no way. It's a huge challenge to consider how you bring more than 50 or 60 people together and allow them the space to share their position, because that's really a major part of it. Folks are there to share their perspective and hear their perspectives of others. So, there's really no way to eat this elephant except one bite at a time. And one of the things that Sarah was very supportive of is when I started here last June, and I learned about the organization and some of the challenges with public events. And that's one of the reasons why I expanded the effort to senior centers and schools, because those are two significant parts of the community. And the schools first. It's interesting with the kids, and they're amazingly clever, right? Kids listen to everything. I mean, you really had an Alexa in your house before you had an Alexa. I'm just saying. Those of you who have an Alexa. So as they begin to enter adulthood, they're often told what to be afraid of, not what to think about. And I give you a great example. So last month we had a program at MLK High School, and we got to speak to about 40 or so kids. And that particular effort was, you're in charge. You have 10 choices when you become in charge. I'm sorry, you have 10 slots, but you have 18 choices. And that really fostered a great debate in terms between the children, in terms of, and these were high schoolers, but they were minors. After each effort, we showed them an article that published in the New York Times that showed what other teenagers picked as their top 10, as well as what 18 to 29-year-olds picked as their top 10. So it was interesting how they were different, right? And I'm sure some of that had some regional impact. Probably the thing that if I made a bit of an aside that really concerned me just a bit was that it was two classrooms. Like I said, one part of the article was teenagers, the other part was 18 to 29-year-olds. And two of the groups did not pick free speech in their top 10. That's a little disconcerting to me, but I'm a little like, wow, because they've always had it, right, with social media and so forth. So I'm sorry, Bill. So let me give you a short answer to your very short question. I'm not sure we can do this in mass, because it's the human element that matters here most. And that's the piece that I personally, and I think I can speak for my team, that makes it so gratifying to us. First of all, they're shocked that we're there, right? They're shocked that we don't have an agenda. We're not showing up to tell them what to think. That's not what it is, right? We're there to foster their communication with each other, and people are starved for it. I mean, in this world, I mean, news and information has become affirmational, right? I mean, like, for the most part, you pick your flavor. You have a finite group of, like, you talk to people who believe the same things as you. So here's an opportunity that you can actually show up and talk to somebody who may have a different opinion than yours, with the expectation of sharing your perspectives. I'm not sure how we can do that in a big way.
Listen, I appreciate your passion, so thank you for that. And I am a dreamer. I can't wait for the Bridging Blocks parade that draws 1 million people into Center City, Philadelphia. But I think no media company can pull this off on its own. My personal bias about this stuff is we really need to help our children by exposing them to media literacy, educational opportunities, so that in a much more comprehensive way, two or more other not-for-profits can work constructively together. So I want to, with what 1 or 2 minutes that we have left here, I want to turn the conversation a little bit toward the whole business principle of partnership. There isn't, in my opinion, enough muscle between two or more not-for-profits to work collaboratively together, and in an environment where resources are always limited, how do you both think about the idea of two organizations coming together to work toward a common goal?
I hate to say it, but I've always viewed nonprofits as the ultimate cottage industry. Nonprofits typically are small. They can be parochial, too narrowly focused. They have governance structures that foster. Don't get me started. They have governance structures that fosters their own independence and doesn't necessarily encourage collaboration. Having said that, I think if you look at most nonprofits and you look at their mission, there is a strengthening society, engagement element to most missions. So certainly, WHYY could take a very narrow view and say, this is not what we're all about. It hasn't done that. National Constitution Center, same thing. Say, we're just a museum. Well, they're way, way, way beyond. I'm on the board of People's Light, which is a theater out in Malvern. And they do a lot out in the community, bringing students in to see plays and then talk about what are the issues around the play. You speak up, what's your point of view. So I think the collaboration part I think is tricky. But many nonprofits, I think they can look at their mission and say, there is an element here. There's something here in the context of what we're talking about in terms of what we could do.
Interesting. Tony, how difficult or how easy has it been to partner with the Free Library of Philadelphia?
So during my tenure here, frankly, I just don't think we were leveraging the relationship well enough, if I may be blunt. My predecessor, I don't think, was leveraging it enough. I mean, they're very open. They understand, I think, their position in the community, at least the people that I talk to there. And I haven't had any difficulties, but I think to the contrary. And I mean, the good news here, in addition to the other events that we've added on, we've been fortunate enough January through March to increase our library event population by 19% in attendees. And I think that speaks to, number one, you got to ask for what you want. And number two, illustrate to your partner why it's mutually beneficial. And so my contact there, who runs adult programs, and I believe I'm not sure if she's here yet, but I know she's on a panel later, understands the value of interacting with the community and what the community means to the library's importance. Libraries matter, right? And as Bill has said on a number of occasions, they're more than just a place to check out books. They become community centers in a lot of neighborhoods. You have folks who go there for resume help. The main library has an endeavor there for small businesses, which actually prompted an event that we had last year focusing on the small business community. So the libraries, what they do, I mean, they're imperative, I believe, to any community. And so, again, I can be long-winded, I'm sorry. It's the sales guy forever.
Apologies, hardly necessary.
Okay, all right.
But thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Angelique, I think Angelique said you live in Montgomery County, did I hear? Yeah. So, quick show of hands, who lives in the city of Philadelphia or works in the city of Philadelphia? Yeah, okay. It's often reported, talk about misinformation, it's often reported as a negative, but this community, Angelique, if not this region, has the highest ratio of libraries per capita than any other urban center across the country. And to Tony's point, if you think of libraries as a place that's more than a place to take a book out, although, Julie, I take your point about books, then it made sense when Fred suggested that WHYY partner with the Free Library of Philadelphia. And Tony, I was actually trying to get you to one specific point. You have found the point of intersection not at the top of the Free Library of Philadelphia, but at the branch librarians. Is that correct?
That's 100% correct.
Okay, right.
They're very welcoming and very supportive.
right?
And I'll quickly give another example. Episcopal Community Services, which you mentioned, which I've been involved in. They operate a community center in West Philadelphia, St. Barnabas. And it's evolved into a broad-based community center that provides an array of services. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. And when we expanded that, it was like, okay, well, some services will be provided in-house because they're right in ECS's wheelhouse and their core competency. And some, legal services or healthcare services, ECS doesn't have a clue. So how do we partner with other largely nonprofits to bring them in? So, the first door is this, and the second door is this, and the third door is that. And it's actually worked out pretty well.
Excellent. So a point of leverage is partnership, I guess, is what we were trying to get to. I'm following, I have a timer, and I'm following your Apple Watch, Fred. Either of you like to offer up some closing comments before we close out the panel? Fred?
I think this is a great effort, and I think this really three-tier approach. You have the traditional media, communications, and the programs around that. You have this, which is the sort of next level down, citywide, region-wide symposium on the topic and civic engagement, and then you have the down and dirty in the community, in the library, part 20, 30 people at a time. It's actually pretty cool. Thank you for your vision. Tony, any final words?
Yes, so WHYY.org/events, that's my plug, for future endeavors around not only bridge and blocks, but other great opportunities to learn and interact with people on our events page. And one other thing I would challenge everyone here. So some of the subjects, i.e. homelessness and some other very serious subjects, folks come also looking for resources. So if you know someone that could contribute through professional knowledge, through just a familiarity in terms of what they know about a given subject, please, by all means, suggest that they come to our Bridge and Blocks and share their knowledge, because so many folks will come looking for resources or insights. They have a problem, and connecting people is a great byproduct of this effort. So come yourselves, but if you can't, please tell a friend.
Well, we've come to the end of our time. I think on behalf of all of our guests here this morning, I want to thank the two of you for being here and thank the two of you for what it is you do for this community. Ladies and gentlemen, Fred Sutherland, Tony Cuffie.
Mm-hmm.